Today, I'm excited to talk to Michael Erlewine, who was there in the very beginning. I think you're one of the people that introduced Robert to astrology in general. I know he lived with you for some time, and I'm super
Yeah,
excited to hear all about that.
sure. Well, should I just start talking or do you have specific questions or
No, start talking. I want to hear it.
well, I think that I sent you that video of that first neo-astrology conference that Robert arrived at the last moment. He wasn't scheduled and he came with John Townley. John Townley's another person. Have you talked to him?
Not yet. Are you
Well,
still in touch with him?
oh yeah, you should. And if you don't have a contact, just send me an email with the request so I don't forget.
Okay.
And I'll give you his phone number and stuff like that. But he knew them before I did, and he brought, uh, I think just Robert. I don't think he brought Ellen. I can't remember. I think he just brought Robert. He showed up. Uh, this was one of two neo astrology conferences with some of the greatest lights, Robert and Michelle Gokeland and Switbert Ertl and all kinds of other people there. We had a number of um, what we would call it, conferences, but not for people, just for speakers. I
Mm-hmm.
would bring people in, 10 or 15 people. I would put them up at our center, and then maybe a handful would show up just to watch. But it wasn't about making money. It was about roundtable discussions. And before this, one of my closest friends was Charles A. Jane, uh, famous astrologer. He and I became good friends, and we started what were called ACT Conferences on Techniques at the AFA and UAC a number of seasons. So instead of, because neither of us liked lectures that much, what we wanted to do was to get together in a group and have a group discussion of people who knew about the same subject. So at UAC or AFA, we would have a whole track running from morning till night, every hour with a different group on a different subject. We could talk about psychology and astrology or whatever it was, local space, you know, just whatever it was. There was tons of them. And so we did that. And so this was just one of those. I did a number of them just at our center here in Michigan. And this was one. And suddenly John finally showed up just the last minute, literally. Uh, And with him was this guy, Robert Schmidt. And I got introduced to him, and but we're also setting it up. We're getting it under, it's all just happening. We had, card tables set up in the backyard and a tent and stuff like that. So I didn't have any time to meet Robert or to talk to him. But John would just say, and I think you heard that video we took,
Yeah.
and that's pretty. You should put some of that in your thing because that's the real deal. That's what exactly happened. And he said, "Well, uh, should we put Robert Schmidt on, as a speaker, or does he just want to attend?" And that's John Townley. Oh no, put him on, make him a speaker. And then he and I got into a conference, which but conversation with each other. I think that you could post some of that because it's pretty telling. Um, where we realized while we were talking that both of us got deep into the subject matter, um, not having expected anything like this. And then after that conference, um, Robert and I were trying to talk about lots of stuff, and he decided that he wanted to move up to where we were.
Yeah.
So he came up and lived with us at our center right next door to us. And I think we had most meals together for a couple of years. He was there for over 2 years, I think, but I don't know the exact time. But anyway, when he arrived, he was basically a theoretical physicist and a mathematician.
Mm-hmm.
And so we got too busy to work on chaos theory for a while. We did a whole bunch of maybe a half a year's or more work together on. He was doing the mathematics, and um, so yeah, so that's how we got going. And then Ellen was there too, and Ellen was supposed to start to annotate and record a huge library. You've seen pictures of that, I hope, or not.
I don't know if I have. Do you have some?
Yeah, should I Should I put it on and
I'd
show?
love to see them. Yeah. Go ahead
Yeah,
and you can click share your screen.
yeah, I can do that. So let me just see.
Uh-oh.
Okay, tell me if you see.
Yes.
That,
I
that's
s-
that, that's our library.
Oh, wow. Okay.
That's all astrology books and a bunch of. I'm not just a an astrologer. I'm also started the largest music database in the world.
What's it called?
It's called All Music. It's AMG is a master name. It's All Music Guide, allmusic.com. Uh, I had what is it, 150 full-time people and about between 500 and 750 freelance writers that worked with us. And so, for instance, this library I don't have anymore. It's now at the University of Illinois.
Okay.
Uh, uh, so it's part of their permanent collection. They came and hauled it away with giant Allied van lines and stuff like that. It was a huge, I think there's over 16,000
Wow.
uh, volumes, and 4,000 of them there's no other record in any other library for.
Wow.
So that just tells you a little bit about that. And okay, so I'm trying to see
So
what
tell
else
us,
was
what was the name of your center?
my name. First of all, a couple different centers are in one place. One is Matrix Software. Matrix Astrology Software was the first astrology software ever made. I was the first person ever to program it and give it to back to astrologers to use. And that was in 1977. I got my first home computer working, and I spent many, many months just, and then you didn't have disk drives, you didn't have printers, you didn't have anything like that, but you had to record programs onto cassette tape.
Hmm.
And you had to verify it, which was pretty tricky, just because sometimes it just wouldn't verify. Drop one byte and you had to start over. But I would send these out to astrologers who really, really wanted them because up till then, in all these centuries, they've all had to use tables,
Yeah.
lookup tables of ephemerides and stuff like that. But I ended that. But after a while, I couldn't. All I did was be sending out free software, and I had two kids, and that was you know, so I had to start charging, and then it became a company
Okay.
in 1978. But it was the first, in fact, an article that was done on me in Red Herring magazine, which is no longer published, found out that Matrix Software, my company, was the second oldest software company that is still on the internet. The only older one is Microsoft.
Oh, wow.
So that, and even then, astronomers came and bought our software, even though they hate astrology, uh, because there was none. They couldn't do it themselves.
Wow.
And I taught myself how to do it. I never got out of high school. I and I hated math more than anything, just
So how
because
did you how did you build it if you could
I
even give a
I
brief
just
ex
I just hacked it, and eventually I became what's called a hacker. I could cut it, I could do it, and I did it, and then I ended up working for Microsoft. I did 110, no, maybe it was 115 forums on New Age material for Microsoft what's called MSN for
Hmm.
when they did it and stuff like that. So I became, um, hard to explain, but yeah, I guess I became first a programmer. Then I became a database engineer.
Mm-hmm.
Then I became in which I ended up being what's called a content aggregator. That in this, and now I'm basically titled an archivist of popular culture because the All Music Guide is the largest in the world, still is. And I also started the All Movie Guide, which is one of the two largest film databases in the world.
Huh.
And I also started the very definitely the largest rock and roll concert poster database. And that's at the University of Michigan's Bentley Historical Library. These things are all around the country in different places now. And I just finished it in the last month offering to uh, a few astrological archives. One is called Kepler College, and then one is called Alexandria, I think. And I sent them each a 1 terabyte, 139,000 files of all of the material I collected in 40 or 50 years. And this
Hmm.
includes hundreds of interviews like this, hundreds and even more podcasts, thousands of articles, thousands of, tens of thousands of images, uh, just everything, a great number of DBF files, databases, all stuff that I had written. And so I did that. And now those are going to be available for everyone soon, free. People can
Good.
go and pick whatever they want out of it. If they want images to illustrate something, it's all going to be free.
How will people
Uh,
access that?
that will be through Kepler College and Alexandria or whatever the name is that is. I'd have to remember it maybe more correctly. But and then a couple other places that I'm still working with, trying to get it set up. But that should happen within 6 months. I mean, I'm done. I've sent them their terabyte of data. And so I still have 80 hard drives that are a terabyte or more to go through. So I'll be sending them more stuff, but I have to take a break. I can't just do that all the time. It's just too
Yeah.
crazy. So anyway, uh, I'm trying to think of what else can I show you while you're here.
Do you have any
Uh,
other pictures to share?
I have thousands and thousands of pictures, but I don't know what you mean. I don't have many pictures of Schmidt
Hmm.
or Ellen. So maybe we'll go back to just us so you have a better
Okay.
picture to show. So hang on a second. Now I have to remember how to do it every time. Oh, here we go. Okay. You back? You there? Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay,
So
so then go ahead.
the
Yeah, more
conference
questions, better.
the conference that you met Schmidt at, what year was that?
Boy,
Was it
I
maybe
think I
19?
sent it to you. You've got it on that video I put up. But when was it?
It was the
I
mid
hate to,
80s, right?
yeah, something like that. But
Hmm.
I'm just not so good at that.
Do you remember
I
the
wish,
name of the conference, what you called
yeah,
it?
yeah, it's Neo Astrology
Yes,
Conference,
yes.
number
Yes.
one. And then there was a second one a year later. That of course Schmidt was there again and lecture. That's the lecture that you looked at of him talking about where we
About
met.
chaos theory.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So how
So
did his work and your work on chaos theory fit into everything? Like when you say you were working on chaos theory, tell me a little bit more about that.
well, uh, y- 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 what I think what I think happened is that he was a theoretical physicist and looking into astrophysicist stuff, and he was not an astrologer. So he liked being there, and he became part of our staff. And in some sense, it was a problem. Figure, well, what is he going to do, right? But
Yeah.
because he and I just loved to talk with each other, and we were a big enough company that we could just have him be there and pay him,
Yeah.
but he didn't have to do anything, and he didn't do much. But eventually, he translated a book by Theodore Landscheid, who's maybe the only astrologer that really influenced me. Theodor Landscheid was a Supreme Court Justice of Germany and a well-known climatologist. And he came to our center one of those. No, he was there that year that he was there then. And I have
Hmm.
video of him and stuff like that. So um, he had a book called, in German, called Children of the Light. And it's about the effects of solar flares on scientists and creators of all kinds. But it had never been translated, so Schmidt translated it. So it's important to know.
Yeah.
And and it's a wonderful book. I can't publish it because his wife's not interested in anyone doing that. But I do have copies of it if someone wants to read it or review it or
Okay,
something
so
like
you
that.
have Schmidt's translation of that.
Yeah, he did it for
That's
me. I
that's
paid him to
awesome.
do it, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
Uh,
because I don't have that. I haven't
No,
seen
you
it.
don't. You probably never heard of Landscheid either.
I had because I'd heard of him in some of Schmidt's earlier lectures. He talks about it in his phase
Okay.
lectures in the 90s. He talks about it a little
Oh,
bit.
okay, cool. Well,
Yeah.
Came and he and I became friends in 1978. I sent him his first computer to Germany because
Wow.
they didn't have any.
Wow.
And then he eventually came over and we became friends and we worked on some similar pieces of astrology. He was interested in what are called geocentric planetary nodes, and I was interested in nodes, but I was interested more in just the astronomical heliocentric uh, nodal system of of all the planets' orbits as they're inclined one to the other. So um, anyway, so Robert and I didn't talk much about what he had to do here. It just understanding we were happy to have found each other and just had, we ate dinners and
Yeah.
everything almost every day. And right next door, I had like a 8 bedroom house, although some of them got filled up now doing this, that, and the other thing. Um, and then Ellen was a whole nother creature. We can talk about that. She's a different, and you knew her as well.
Yeah.
Well, then you know exactly how she is. If she got something on her skin that she didn't like, she just hated it. And if it
Yeah.
was a person, she hated them. And so that too much of time was spent doing that. Um, and she kind of controlled him with her temper a certain amount, uh, best she could. But he was uncontrollable, really.
Yeah.
And we can talk about his working habits anytime you want. Uh, you'll have to keep redirecting me back. I'm 84 at this point, so that
Yeah.
these are all
Well,
memories.
it he was unemployable in a certain sort of way because he was so driven to pursue his own interests. And so he always talked about how generous it was of you to give him a position at Matrix and just let him do his thing and be who he was, you know. And
Let's look for a second how that came to be. That came to be because he went to John, what is St. John's or
yeah,
whatever it
St.
is,
John's College.
and so they gave him like a European. He learned probably Latin and Greek, and he knew all this stuff, and that's what he knew. So
Yeah.
really, um, he, he would be hard to employ because the appetite for that kind of stuff is rare, and he
Yeah.
wasn't at the level of being a theoretical physicist to go and work for MIT or wherever they go and work. Um, so really, I I think that the truth of the whole thing is that he came to with us. I offered him, but he wasn't the only one. I've had other people here that came for years at a time, just because at one point we filled the whole house next door, which is called the Heart Center, um, with what did we have? We had JPL uh, physicists, I mean programmers from Jet Propulsion Laboratory for the government. We
Uh-huh.
had the uh, chief astrologer for Hare Krishna. We had a Sanskrit scholar. We had a jazz expert. I published many books on music, about 21 books on music. These are like 1,000-page books, some of them. Um, the house was filled with people, and we have outside a huge shrine room. I also run a Buddhist center for since the 80s.
Okay.
So we had a Tibetan Buddhist center going on. So it was just endless. And then I'm also raising 4 kids
Yeah.
uh, right in the middle of that. So I think that Robert came, was happy to be here because we didn't give him any crap. He didn't have to do anything.
Yeah.
And Ellen volunteered, but didn't really do anything. She, I have mixed feelings with her just because she was such a pain in the butt a lot of the time. It wasn't always a lot of fun. But Robert was always a gentleman, and we just spent a lot of time. And then we talked about astrology for years.
Yeah.
So when he left here, he suddenly started to call himself an astrologer, but he wasn't when he came here.
Yeah.
But he
Yeah.
left that, and also he'd figured out a way to make himself useful to astrology, which is and he'd already been working on hindsight
Yeah.
but this suddenly became more astrological.
Yeah. It's like
And
he applied his method of hindsight to the
yeah,
ancient astrological works that hadn't been translated.
that's right. And uh, that's exactly what. So then suddenly he was an astrologer, and as you said, I once came to one of his conferences on that incredible house that Ellen had. It was
Yeah.
like a mansion, right?
Yeah.
And remember the back porch and the second
Yeah.
floor? Wasn't that beautiful? Here's
Yeah.
all the katydids singing in the leaves just right next to you, but because you're already up high, and then people drinking and smoking and doing all the stuff they do. It was a magical time
Yeah.
for me. And out of that came a book that he published. I published a book with a introduction by Stephen Forrest. It was called Astrology of the Heart.
Yes.
And the first he published it there, but then like so many things they did, it went so far and it didn't. So I republished it myself,
Okay.
many times. And so now it's a free book. Uh, you know, I have a whole site of all free books. Have you've been there, right? Or not?
No.
Oh, that's hmm. Uh, I think we should go back there briefly
Yeah.
uh, if you have the time.
Yeah.
You okay with it? So let me just figure out
Absolutely.
how. Okay. Okay. So now what I want to do, what do I want to do? I think what I want to do is see if I can just get. Oops, no, this is photography of mine. Um, but I will find it. Can't be too far up. But nope, this is a new site. I'm moving it to. I'm moving it to this site. Um, but it's not done yet. So
Okay.
I know how to get to it though. Okay, here's my current site, but the new one will be more compact and have a lot more stuff in it. Okay, so then if I go to free books, these are all different books um, on astrology that are free. 57 of them, all free to anyone. Or here's 336 books just on rock and roll posters.
Okay. Great.
So I'm just saying that largest in the world, largest collection in the world of them. And I
Wow.
used to have all the originals, but I didn't keep them because they had to be in a huge safe. And you never looked at them. And finally I said, what the heck? And I photographed all of them. Uh,
Okay.
I'm deep into photography, but I also have, trying to say what, I'm just trying to say I wasn't just an astrologer. I
Yeah.
was also a musician for many. Here's me interviewing Muddy Waters, and I've
Wow.
interviewed scores and scores of black musicians. I studied black music for a long time, and uh, before that, I was hitchhiked with Bob Dylan and traveled with him. Um, so I was very involved in. These are just different books on the folk scene. I met both Dylan and Joan Baez, uh, that kind of stuff. So
When did you go hitchhiking with Bob Dylan?
1961.
How did
Um,
that come about?
well, I got to know him because he would come through. I'm trying to see where I was now. Now I got us here, but I don't need that. Okay. Yeah, he would come through Ann Arbor, and I helped him put on his first conference in Ann Arbor so that we became friends. I can remember us sitting at a little table in what's called the Mug, Michigan Union Grill. He had just performed one of his first conferences. I think they even spelled his name wrong, but he was waiting to see how the Daily News, the Michigan Daily, which is a student newspaper, liked it. And it came out. And then we were just sitting at a table doing that. And then he hitchhiked out of town. But later we hitchhiked together from Gertie's Folk City up in New York City up to, uh, Cambridge. And then he went on to Schenectady and I went on to Laconia, watched the motorcycle races, stuff like that. But this was 1961, June. But anyway, I have lots of books about music, and I know a lot about it because All Music Guys, as I said, is the largest music database in the world.
Okay.
millions of records and stuff like that. So, I mean, records meaning not vinyl, but
Yeah.
recorded, biographies and all of that kind of stuff. So anyway, that's what all this is. But I also, sorry, I'm having to dodge the camera. You know what I mean? Try to get up here. Nope, it's not going to let me do it. Well, yeah, maybe this will do it. Nope, that's not what I wanted. I wanted to show you. Uh, yeah, just these are all photography books
Okay.
that I wrote, just to show you there's another area I know a lot about.
Wow.
Um, um, anyway, there's a ton of them. So, yeah, so that at some point you might want to go look at through that.
Yeah, definitely.
Right now, you would be at startypes.com because that's the holding one till the new one's open. Then it's at Spirit Grooves, like groovy,
Okay.
spiritgrooves.net. But that'll be coming up soon. Yeah, and that's what this is. This is what it will look like. It's just not fully populated yet. So,
Okay.
but it goes through. Um, there's my classic posters, which is there's the library we just talked about.
Yeah.
There's AMG. Those are all companies I work for. All kinds of, for instance, I provided Netflix with their movie data for the first few years.
Really?
Oh yeah, so stuff like that. And there's a logo I designed that. I also designed the logo for Eden Foods, um, which
Huh.
is yeah, and stuff like that. So been very active. It's astrology is not the only thing that I've done, but it
Yeah.
happens to be something that's deep within my psyche. I love it. Not so happy with astrologers, just because they have trouble making a living, and
Yeah.
they don't seem to have become disciplined enough um, to actually see stuff through. But that'd be another thing to talk about. You probably don't want to put that in the video or anything, but I don't care either. So
Yeah, I mean, actually, I'd love to hear more about that.
which part?
Just
Oh,
like how you came to that conclusion or what your experience with that had been about astrologers and what you
okay,
feel is their kind of plight.
okay. Well, it's easy. It's pretty simple. Let me just give you. All we have to do is look at history. 500 years ago, yeah, we should go back out of here again.
Yeah.
So you have something to show if you wanted to do it.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think I'm pretty good now. I forget what I got to see where I put the, hang on. There we are. All right. Um, 500 years ago, Copernicus was an astronomer, astrologer, and he pointed out to the world that everything does not revolve around us, the Earth. In fact, is the Earth revolves around the sun. Well, not everyone went along with that because at that time, astrologers were astronomers and vice versa.
Yeah.
So they split into two groups. One group became what we know today as astronomers, and they had two charts. They had the geocentric chart, the one that all astrologers use,
Yeah.
which is basically just a snapshot of the solar system from the Earth's oblique angle. And in the other hand, they had the heliocentric chart, was the chart of the solar system itself. But astrologers back then, those that remained astrologers, refused to accept it, that the fact that we revolve around the sun. And even today, they do not use the heliocentric chart. There's some lip service, but they've not been empowered. They've not taken it to heart.
Yeah.
But the astronomers, remember, today, the oldest academic disciplines are, well, yeah, they're basically botany and astronomy. But astrologers are still struggling to exist, just as Bob and Ellen struggled to exist.
Yeah.
And over the years, I think we serviced 42,000 astrologers. So I have a pretty good idea from experience of dealing with many, many, many of them over many, many years. that's not a walk in the park. That astrologers astrology is not considered a right livelihood. At least it is kind of in India, different kind of astrologer.
Yes.
That when I first uh, learned how to program, one of the and this is before computers, I needed a programmable calculator. And I was learning all this. So I went to my local bank and I said, I need to borrow $500. I'm I'm gonna. He says, well, what are you? And I was stupid enough to say, well, I'm an astrologer. And then he reaches for a chart in his thing. It was a risk chart. He says, well, the risk for my loans due are right above migrant workers,
Wow.
and we will not give you a loan. And they didn't. And I had to go back 3 times. I finally did, and that's how Matrix software was born. Uh,
That's crazy. So he actually had a chart that listed
absolutely,
astrologers as a profession above my.
absolutely. He had a risk chart. It was on a piece of paper, and of course, I realized how stupid I was. Could have said almost anything else,
Yeah.
and it would have been just fine. But it's too much like gypsies or something like that. They also
Yeah.
wouldn't get a loans. So anyway, my point is that today, and I've known a lot of astrologers, and I've been to a lot of conferences and met. I must have 3 or 4 thousand astrologers that are just on my on yeah, my Facebook. They don't ask questions, and when you see them, um, they are friendly enough and kind enough. Uh, People, I like them as people. I'm going to have to delete this. Sorry, I got a lot of stuff going on. Um, anyway, the point is that um, astrologers apparently refuse to accept the sun. And another thing, even today, they're not interested in solar flares or solar activity as a group. There's a few people that have learned from me, like Ray Mardix and Philip Sedgwick, and a few people picked up. I published a book in 1976 called Astrophysical Directions. Today it's called Astrology of Space. It talks about astrology in deep space so we can understand it on the ecliptic rather than in right ascension and declination. So anyway, that's a quick story of the history. So these people, these astrologers, they never got it and they don't have it today. And the only difference between the two that I can see is that the astronomers had 2 different charts, uh, but astrologers had just the one.
Yeah.
And the clincher is that in the geocentric chart, that I take it you know astrology enough to know what that is.
Yeah.
Okay, so but those positions are not bound to the center of the Earth by gravity. That's just an oblique shot from, but heliocentrically, all of the positions are bound, right?
Yeah.
By gravity to the sun. In fact, they're so influential that the center of gravity of all the planets is not geometrically at the center of the sun, but it can stray right outside the surface of the sun from the effects of the gravity of, and for even right now it is. Right now it's outside the actual flaming edge of the sun in
Yeah.
space.
Yeah.
So this is stuff that and astrologers get lost in various psychic kind of stuff that's not astrology is basically what astronomy means, kind of cultural astronomy. That's really legitimate. But trying to stretch it into some kind of psychic stuff, that's just that's very common.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. I did nothing. Early on, when I go to conferences, there were very few astrologers, mostly psychics.
Yeah.
So I got to know lots of them. And it was the seances, and they gave me names, special names like I'm Drum Song or something like that. This kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't think there's much you can do. I mean, I'm 84 and I've been doing this for a long, long time. I've not been able to make much of a dent in the mass of astrologers to kind of get their awareness up to the point where they could appreciate uh, that yes, we're born on Earth, but we're also born in the solar system just as much. It's our solar system, just like it's our Earth. And having, just like we have two eyes, which allow us to see depth of field, we need more than one chart in order to get to triangulate and start to
I
see
see.
that it's a theory. Anyway, so that idea. So I'm just trying to. So that's more astrology than I thought you'd want to hear. But um, anyway, I've been trying to talk to them at conferences and many books, as you can see. It's growing. People are starting to wake up a little bit, but I think astrologers have a long way to go.
So how do you apply that in your astrology? Do you use the two separate charts when you're doing a reading?
They're not just two. I also invented a technique that's now part of every astrologer's thing called local space. Local space was invented by me, but basically what it is azimuth and altitude with a story so that if your dad picked you up and walked outside when you were born, he might see, Venus in the sky, night sky twinkling, and he might see the moon. And those are what are called great circles. They not only go through the heavens, but they divide the earth in two, and so that they run through cities. And so my technique, for instance, I was born in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and the line through my Jupiter, and remember that in Jupiter, the Sanskrit word for Jupiter is guru. And if you
Hmm.
don't know that, then you don't know Jupiter.
Right.
And if you do know that, you understand that Jupiter has to be our guide, our path that we're going to walk. Anyway, it runs right through Ann Arbor, Michigan, where I developed Matrix and also the Prime Movers Blues Band that I did and many other things. So trying to communicate. So astrologers have picked up on this. They love that. But I have other techniques that are very sophisticated that they don't know because they're not really taking, if they really love stuff, they would find the same things that I did because they're there. It's not like they're hidden,
I
but you
see.
have to, but I think they have trouble existing and then they don't trust each other and they're not always very kind to each other. They don't help us they're not up high enough themselves. So they hate to boost others till they get up there. That's just my 2 cents.
I see. Yeah.
Yeah. So and whether it's true or not, well, certainly true. Certainly Robert and Ellen struggled to make money, right?
Oh, absolutely. And they struggled with what you're talking about for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, they eventually, I would say, ended and ended their career in some form of exile or having been blackballed. Yeah.
Well, they were blackballed because some of the people I don't really want to get into too much. Some people stole stuff from them
Okay.
and did not give them credit. And I won't get into it, but I know the whole story because I mean, even after Robert died, Ellen would call me too often just because all she really wanted to do was rant and rage about somebody that did her wrong or did Robert wrong or did the work wrong. Never was able to do much about it. And
Yeah,
I even got involved with some people. Some people took some of their uh, URLs that weren't theirs, that was his, just because he's such a like a busy professor. He didn't watch them carefully enough, so someone grabbed them because
I
they
see.
needed to be uh, re-upped.
Yeah,
I
I
think
know,
that's
and I know about that as well.
Well,
Yeah.
I think that's disgusting. And I think that no one, especially these people, took from them and took all the teaching that came and lived with them. And then to do that to someone, I can't imagine, maybe you know better than I do. What would be a good excuse to do that?
I haven't been able to think of one.
Okay, well, then I'm in the same boat. I've kind of let it rest because I can't spend the rest of my life hounding somebody. But I certainly told that somebody more than once very clearly that this is wrong, just plain wrong. Um, But anyway, we can also say Robert also had trouble finishing stuff. I mean, just terrible in the sense that, and when we talked about not so much about astrology and certainly not much about his Greek astrology. We talked about how we worked,
Yeah.
how we used our minds.
Tell me
And
about
we did
that.
and we did that a lot. And but he would get to the point where he would be trying to finish something and hit went on a sidebar.
Yeah. Or hit a
Something he had to
snag.
figure out, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
then he'd take a sidebar from the sidebar and a sidebar from the sidebar from the sidebar. And pretty soon he just didn't finish it. It wasn't done. It couldn't be published. Many things. This
Yeah.
this was more routine than not.
Yeah.
They did do a lot of stuff. And I used to have it. I just donated all of their stuff to the University of Illinois, where it's all on the shelf and cataloged. So they would always send me everything because we were friends. Um,
So, one of my clear memories of what you're talking about with Robert's perfectionism um, is when he was publishing definitions and foundations, which he did publish in 2009.
mhm.
And he worked on that for years. I think he worked on definitions and foundations for about 5 years altogether.
I believe
And
it.
people were, which is actually a reasonable amount of time to work on a book of that magnitude and depth. Because if you look at the book, it's almost surprising that it didn't take him longer than 5 years. It's a very complicated
Right.
translation with commentary. But the thing that happened is he thought that he would be able to publish it, maybe I think a year, maybe a year and a half before he could, but he hit some snag, and I can't recall
Oh, it
what.
doesn't matter because it was always a snag.
Right. And he would walk. So a lot of his thinking, when he was thinking really hard on a problem, he would walk through town, almost power walk. And I can remember I would be over visiting with Ellen, and he'd, walk in, and she'd harass him about whether he had finished this problem yet. And he'd say, I'm
Oh,
almost
well,
there. I'm almost there. I'm almost there. And,
not
that went on for a while. And he did in the end uh, resolve the issue. And I think he was glad in the end that he took that amount of time. He talks about it in his intensives that he did. There's a series of intensives that are on our website different from that period, like 2008, 2009. He did some intensives. And in those intensives, he references that because that's the time that he's publishing definitions and foundations. And he references this snag that he hit and how maddening it was to be able to figure out that problem.
you probably knew them really well also.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
I did. I did. And it
but
was sad.
I miss him as a friend,
Yeah,
big time.
yeah,
He's the most fun person I ever had to talk about whatever we talked about.
yeah,
But also I think that just between us, I think that he was trying to find a way to live, to make a living.
yeah,
And I think that we helped him out and we also gave him ideas. Well, he could move into this astrology stuff and be an astrologer. And he did it seriously. Um, and then he went on and did stuff with Rob Hand as well. Um, yeah, I don't know how else to explain it. Yeah, some of it was just a convenience that he needed something. And he could fit into the niche in astrology and actually do to benefit people,
yeah,
which he did. But then he had people working for him. I don't want to rattle them off, kind of semi-famous astrologers that kind of turned on him,
yeah,
did not support him like he supported them,
yeah,
or came and lived in his house and stuff like that. So I find that I took on a lot of that and started giving them some crap, um, just because I hated to see my friend treated like that. But also, I don't know exactly what he might have done to bring it on. Maybe he was just too lackadaisical or just trying to do what he did and he didn't pay attention. I don't really know. You were there more than I was, so you probably have a much better idea.
yeah. I mean, I guess I'll just say, I never had anything in my life comparable of being It's like the no good deed goes unpunished is what it reminds me of. Yeah.
Well, you know what they said for one of the French impressionists, Paul Cézanne, used to complain in his diaries that all of these famous painters came to his place,
Yeah.
sucked up whatever they
Yeah.
could, and got inspired by him, and went off and took those ideas and did something for themselves with it, which
Yeah.
is nothing wrong with that. I'm just sort of saying, um, yeah, I think he mothered a whole. I mean, yeah, I mean, I'm not that interested in Greek and Latin, and that's not my way. I'm deep into Tibetan Buddhism, where we have what are called you learn to go into your mind, what are called terma, mind treasures that you can learn
Okay.
to pull out of your mind much easier than you can learn to read Greek. And some of these guys didn't even really read Greek and still don't.
Yeah.
So what the hell, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, so I'm not totally happy with all that.
Yeah. Yeah, it also reminds me, I mean, somebody told me one time that like Thomas Edison didn't actually invent the light bulb. He's just
But
the one
this
that get
happens a lot, right?
Yeah, and I think I mean the really famous one, Tesla, I mean, he was ripped off. He was ripped off a ton. I mean, almost
Well,
like
Kammerer was ripped off, I
yeah.
think by Jung.
Okay.
They
Yeah.
went and took some of it and then capitalized on that, but he was always kind of left in the dark. Um, yeah, yeah, John Townley and Robert were going to try to do something with Kammerer's work,
Yeah.
and he's
Yeah.
still, and John still is.
Okay. Yeah, I definitely need to talk to him.
You
Yes,
absolutely do, and he is more direct than I am. There was
I
a
think
whole
so.
group of people. We all were together. We had a chef. Uh, it was all good and all and pretty much fun, other than work.
Yeah. I
So
actually have a audio recording of Bob describing the first time he met you. It's kind of long. It's almost like 10 minutes, but if you want, I'll play it for you.
sure,
Okay.
yeah,
Let's see.
yeah, I'd like to. Then I would have a copy of it.
Yeah. This is a fun little story of him meeting you with John Townley. It's the same thing that you shared, but just from Bob's perspective.
Sure, thanks. I'll
Had
listen.
was dabbling, I think you would agree that that was the right word, with astrology at that time. And she met a fellow named John Townley, who was the author of, the Planets in Love book and all that. And he was doing some astrology for her. And in exchange for that, because of course, even then we didn't have any money, John Townley had this idea, and I'm not quite sure where it ever came from, that, I mean, why he had this idea, that the writings of this Austrian zoologist named Paul Kammerer would be helpful in understanding the physical basis of astrology. Now, Paul Kammerer wrote a book before Jung wrote his synchronicity work. Kammerer's book was called Das Gesetz der Serie, the law of seriality. And he had this sort of quasi-scientific approach to why events seem to repeat in our lives. In his view, to a much greater degree than probability would warrant. So, John Townley, I actually translated a fair amount of this work from German, and it was interesting. It was kind of a difficult book. Not the German wasn't difficult. It was just Kammerer would launch into these kind of endless expositions of the science of his day, and then get to his point, and he'd put it in one terribly cryptic little paragraph and then go off, talking about, the science of his day again. So a lot of the book wasn't really worth translating, at least from a modern context, but I translated a fair amount of it. And John and I spent a fair amount of time trying to figure out whether this had anything to do with astrology. Of course, I didn't know anything about astrology at all, but I was interested, with my background, I was interested in the science question and all this. So anyway, John Townley is an old friend of Michael Erlewine's. Now you have to know John Townley is about that tall, maybe a little shorter, and but is a musician and plays the accordion, the concertina, and instruments like that and so forth. But Michael would always invite him to his conferences not because John necessarily knew anything about the subject matter, but he could always keep things lively. Yeah. If nothing else, he'd just get his, get his concertina out and start playing music. So anyway, so John had this idea that he wanted to present the camera work that we had been doing at Michael's first Neo Astrology conference that was featuring Gokulan. And John said, do you want to come with me to this conference in Michigan? And at the week before that, Ellen had gone to the New Orleans UAC, it was UAC, right? Oh. So she was down there at that conference, and John Townley came and picked me up, and we drove from Cumberland to Michigan, and we drive up in front of Michael's house. And you have to know Michael. I mean, he is a really strange, wonderful guy in his own way. But he has this sort of congenital worried look. And he has these kind of very penetrating sort of eyes and everything. And we pull up in front of his house, and he greets John. And John said, well, here's, my friend Bob Schmidt. And Michael just kind of like, well, what am I supposed to do with him? Does he want to be in the audience, or should I put him on the panel? And John said, put him on the panel. Now here we are on a panel. I'm on a panel. I don't know anything about astrology at all. And all of these luminaries are there, okay? Charles Harvey, Michel Gokulan, Sweetbert Ertel, who is following up on Gokulan's work in Germany, plus Rob Hand, Lee Lehman, and a variety of other people. What's his name? Trendle was there. He was there as well. Who? Kyle was there. And now, so here I am stuck on a panel. I don't know anything about astrology. And there are like 15 people on the panel. And there's an audience of 60 or 70 people. And it was held behind this building that Michael calls the Heart Center, which is right next to his house. And this is wonderful, quiet house where all the lamas would come and stay when Michael was able to host them. And behind that house, he put up like a little pavilion, sort of like a tent. And it was outside, and the weather was absolutely beautiful. And we're sitting out there, and there's the panel, and there were about 60 people sitting in the audience on chairs. And it's all outdoors, and it's all very nice and wonderful. So they start to discuss astrology. Of course, I haven't any idea what all this is about. But I'm on the panel, and I have to somehow say something. I have to find an opening in which I can show that I deserve to be on the panel. And so various little things came up, and I made a couple of small remarks here and a couple of small remarks there. And so I can't remember who it was. I think it was Hand. It might have been Lee Lehman, brought up some issue having to do with quantity and quality. And I saw my opening because one of my hobby horses in that day was the distinction between intensive and extensive magnitude, which was something I had studied historically for many, many years. And I thought that this distinction needed to be made because what I was hearing wasn't quite adequate. So I launched into my little patter about intensive and extensive magnitude. Now, Michael, who was the moderator of the panel, all of a sudden caught on to this in this incredibly weird way. And I'm talking about intensive and extensive magnitude, and then I'm bringing in some of my other platonic hobby horses having to do with the same and the other. And pretty soon, Michael is reciting poetry from Gerard Manley Hopkins and talking about how Shakespeare had sort of wound up the language in such a way, all this kind of thing. And in this beautiful the last day of the conference, this beautiful Sunday toward the late afternoon, everything is beautiful, the sun's beautiful. And nobody else is saying anything except I'm having this dialogue with Michael, which went on for like an hour and a half. And it was just this incredibly magical moment for me and for Michael. So the upshot of all this is Ellen and I come back here to Cumberland, or John drives me back to Cumberland, Ellen comes back, and Ellen and I are struggling to make a living here, publishing translations I was doing from old mathematical texts, not astrological ones. And so about a week or two later, I get a call from Michael Erlewine. And he sort of says in his normal worried manner, like, well, what do you guys do to make a living? And I sort of explained we're trying to get by and stuff. And he said, well, why don't you move up here? I'll give you a job. And at that time, Matrix was making lots of money, and Michael has always been extremely generous. I mean, he would have been a very wealthy man by now if he wanted to, but he was always hosting things and whatnot. So basically, Ellen and I moved up there, and he made up a job for me, right? Which
So anyway,
Yeah. No, that's cool.
let me
Yeah,
see.
that helps me understand it a little better.
Stuff.
Cool. Thank you
Yeah,
for that. That's great to know. Yeah, yeah, we had a good friendship.
yeah.
We liked each other.
So do you have recordings from that first conference that he was on the panel where you guys were talking for an hour and a half on your first meeting?
I just had the one that you heard that I posted.
Okay.
And there may be some others. I've got 80 uh, drives to go through.
Okay.
I very well may have some, and certainly I'll keep you in mind them. But I don't think I'm going to do any more of it until fall,
Okay.
if I live that long, which I hope I will, um, because I just did a lot of it, and I've got to get outside and stay live.
Yeah.
It would be helpful for
Yeah.
that kind of work too. So, but yeah, that's really good. Yeah, so we both saw it the same way. But yeah, I did make up a job for him, and I did everything I could for him. Um, but I think he was like looking for just a way to exist.
Yeah, and I think that it was fated in some way too, because ultimately, um, in his later work, he discovered the true source of the Greek astrology, and I'm sure you're familiar with this too, how he discovered that the complete cohesive system actually existed during Plato's own time, and that the famous mathematician Eudoxus of Cnido had been the Greek originator of the system or
Hmm,
synthesizer of the system. And so it was, think, surely fated for him to have made that discovery. And I think he felt it all worthwhile,
sure.
all trials and tribulations aside. The thrill of that discovery was just like electric in the air. Um, when you would talk to Ellen and Bob in their later years. So
I hear that. Yeah, he and I never talked about the Greek stuff
yeah,
um, because I was very different. I mean, I was very interested in Dharma
yeah,
and very interested in poetry, very interested in I don't know, just spiritual stuff. I,
yeah.
I don't think that they were as interested in spiritual stuff. But what I mean by that is Tibetan Buddhism,
Yeah.
and it's a very strict discipline um, that one has to go through in order to learn that stuff. And I was with my teacher for 36 years. I mean, just to give you some idea, we would drive to the mountains above Woodstock, New York, with our kids, 4 kids, for 31 years, and round trip about 800 miles. I mean, one way.
Wow.
And then we would go to a 10-day intensive teaching on Mahamudra, which is a form
Okay.
of non-meditation. That's a long time. That's a lot, enough to go around the earth 2.5 times.
Yeah.
Uh, so I'm just saying that's the kind of discipline. But Roberts also was very disciplined.
The bigger picture with my role with Project Hindsight, my clear mission is to preserve and protect the Schmidt legacy. So,
Yeah, well, I'm in that. I'll help you any way I can because
that's awesome. Thank you.
I hate what was done
Yeah.
by some of them, especially some of them that took so much from him.
Yeah.
Just like the thing I told you about earlier about
Yeah.
Cezanne. They came and they took
Yeah.
uh, and he inspired them. And then
Yeah.
they turned right around and tried to make it their own, and even kind of, and they most of them, some they couldn't even read Greek.
Yeah.
So where's that at? Anyway, so I've kind of gotten off that uh, rant. I'm starting to sound like Ellen, right? She,
Yeah. No,
she
but I
taught me.
understand. I mean, everybody that cared for Ellen and Bob feels the same way. So,
Okay, good.
yeah, you're in good company.
Yeah, and Kyle, I know feels that way.
Yeah.
I'm still in touch with him.
Yeah. Yeah, he reached out to me about a year ago and I've been in touch with him as well and but yeah. Yeah, this has been a great conversation. I'm so excited to have been in touch with you and I appreciate your offer to help and in every way you can. And I'm excited to hear your your history with the Schmidts. And is there anything else that you'd like to share before we finish up?
See, I'm not so good at I'm good at answering questions.
Yeah,
I mean, that's part of the reasons I didn't even like to do lectures.
yeah,
I like to have a conversation where something's converted and shared, right?
yeah.
I think we've done that, and it's nice to know that you cared about them like I cared about them.
Yes, I
And
feel the same. Yeah, it's good to be in good company.
yeah, yeah. And they had, I think they had a fairly good time here. And I think they finally just got ready to shove off and to go do the hindsight thing. I mean, I think they had been doing hindsight, but taking an astrological turn.
Hmm.
And they did get featured pretty, they got pretty good public acceptance for quite a while. And
Yeah,
I'm not sure quite how it went wrong, uh, but it apparently did. I mean, how could they deserve a bad rep?
yeah,
I don't get it.
yeah. It's funny because I think that they were most well received in the 90s. And that work was really good, but honestly, the later work is orders of magnitude better. So it's almost ironic that the work that was best received was not actually like the pinnacle of
I
his
get it. So
yeah.
what are you guys going to do with it?
So we have a website. We have two websites. We have projecthindsight.net
Hmm.
and it has it has like the history and some articles and documents and then I even have a section called testimony where I have your letter on there that you wrote
Okay.
a small eulogy for him and others have as well. And on there, on that same website, we sell the bundle of Greek track translations from the 90s. And there's a
Oh,
software program that we sell too that Kurt Waring had put
oh
together
yeah.
for us. And then our sister website is called robertschmidtastrology.com.
Hmm.
And people on that website can subscribe. So, actually, the best way to support Project Hindsight moving forward is to maintain a monthly subscription to the
Yeah.
archive. So, people will just have a small monthly fee every month, and then they can access Schmidt's lectures. So, everything that he every lecture that he recorded and sold from like 1993 all the way up until the year of his death. So we have all of that on that subscription site. And then we have another product on that site called From the Vault. And when we find things that were previously unpublished, we're making them available as well. So our goal is to make the entire Schmidt corpus, both published and unpublished, available to the public on our robertschmidtastrology.com website. So
So so do you have kind of like a Patreon kind of thing?
it's basically that, yeah, where
Yeah.
people, and then we can, support our operations with those subscriptions. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, First, let me probably let me try to stop the recording. I want to make sure
Okay.
we don't lose anything.